Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and of course, I'm joined as always with my co-hosts Darian Smith and Jimmy Marion. And guys, it's time to preview this 2023 UAB defense and special teams. On this episode, last week we dropped our 2023 UAB offensive preview episode. So definitely, hey, if you somehow missed that episode, definitely go back in the feed or go to our website, blazervictory.com, and check out that episode. A lot of good content out of the preview in the UAB offense as we go position by position. But, guys, let's go ahead and just kind of jump into this 2023 defense, under first-time our new defensive coordinator, Sione Taufa'o. And, we were able to talk with Sione, or I was able to talk to Sione back in the spring, and, he kind of described his defensive style as, kind of attacking and swarming the ball. And Darren, you went to the scrimmage a couple weeks ago, and I know last week you talked about the offense, but before we get into, diving into each position group, was there any just general feedback you want to kind of give listeners out of what you saw out of this defense?
Yeah, team speed.
Yeah.
I think overall team speed, we are fast. Just that goes without saying. We're a fast team. We get to the ball. And specific players we'll get to during the breakdown. But I really, really love our team speed, and I love some of the guys that's revealing themselves. And so I guess on the position breakdowns, we'll get to it.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and start with the position breakdowns and go into that defensive line. And, I mean, you've got to talk about – we've got to start it off by talking about the leader up front for this UAB defense, and that's, Fish McWilliams. From what you saw, Darian, out of the scrimmage, I mean, has he kind of just kept on where he left off from last year?
Yes. That's all I can give you there. It's just yes, he has.
Just
he
Fish
was
being
giving them
Fish.
fits. Yeah, it's Fish being Fish, and it's so ironic because he doesn't have all of these measurables, but he's dominant. Every time I've seen him play, every practice that I've seen, the dude he's just good. I don't know, he's just a good player. So Fish being Fish. Another guy that on the interior, that the guy next to him, Tyreek Howard, has really taken his game up to another level. We have a very, very good starting to interior. And then we can branch out to guys like Michael Fairbanks. He's dropped down. He's wearing number 9 this year. I talked to him at the scrimmage. I was like, yeah, I see you, going down to that number 9. I said, man, you look consistent. You look good. His body is looking good, like he's transformed. Y'all remember when Fairbanks first came, he had some transformation to do with his body. The dude, I see the traps and everything now. I can see the muscles bulging out. I'm like, yeah, he's transformed his body. He's on the edge. Another guy that's bigger than what I thought. I didn't know Desmond Little was like a 6'5", a legit 6'5", 6'6" kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was wearing number 1 out there. He was good speed and stuff coming off that edge. I'm like, oh, this D-line is pretty damn good. And we were doing a lot of, so yeah, we're gonna be good up front. Another guy, Joker Gill, he was really good. He's had his opportunity to shine and transform his body a lot. As one of those edge guys. Nakia Eason was really nice out there on the edge, of course, doing what he do. Michael Johnson, or is it Michael Moore?
Michael Moore. Yeah,
Michael Moore was a guy that we didn't hear about. And I think he got injured, but I think we saw him during the spring game running with the ones a lot. But he's a guy that I saw out there a lot. And I'm like, man, who's this 95 kid? He's tall. He's rangy, but talking to the other players, they were like, yeah, this is his first time really being able to play. He's been dinged up and injured his whole time here. So now you actually finally getting to see him play, and the dude can play. One guy I wanted to see out there was Keldon Johnson?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I wanted to, but he wasn't able to practice. He was a little dinged up, but he was clear. They was just holding him back for that point in time. But I was asking some of the players, some of the former players. I was like, "Who is this big dude with the dreads right here?" Like I couldn't tell because he had his pads on. Well, he didn't have his shoulder pads on. He was just dressed out. I'm like, "Who is this big dude? Like, is this a new guy that we have on the team?" He's like this big 6'6", 6'5" guy. He got muscles everywhere. And I'm like, "Who is that dude? I do not know who that is." Well, it was him because I eventually just went over there. I was like, "Hey man, you play in or like?" And he told me. I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were this big." I know that was one of the things like we in the past we had those Alex Wright type of guys on the those power rusher type of guys. It seemed like we didn't have them on the roster anymore, but yes, we do. In short, we really do. So I like what we have on the D line, but you know, I think we're going to see some freshmen sub in. One guy I was really impressed with, um, Jimmy John. I know this is gonna kind of surprise you, but McQuan Merriweather.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
From
Yeah.
Columbus.
Not yes, not only was he getting reps a lot with the tools, he was making plays, and he looked like he belonged. And it totally surprised me. I did not expect to see that, but he was there getting to the ball. I was like, "Who is 44?" I kept seeing them flash. I was like, "Who is 44?" I don't know who this is. And I looked at the roster. I'm like, "Oh, that's a true freshman we got out there making plays." I asked D-line coach about him. I don't know why I always get here and I always start forgetting names, man.
Miguel Patrick.
Yeah, I asked Coach Patrick about him, and Coach Patrick was like, "Yeah." He was like, he was like, "Yeah, man." He was like, "Trust me, I know what I'm seeing. I know what I'm seeing. Like, I know what I want to offer this guy. It's like, all right, they gave him leeway to go in here to do what he do. And he was like, I know, he's like, he's a guy that doesn't have all of the measurables and blah, blah, blah. I was like, we got a guy like that on the team right now. He was like, exactly. Sometimes you just got to know what you see and know what you're looking at. He was really punching and using his hands and extending really well. And I was impressed to see Merriweather not only out there, he wasn't just a body for depth, he was making plays. So I really wanted to give him his flowers, and hopefully he can continue to grow. I'm excited. That's not a guy that I thought that he was gonna be here at this quick, but he is. And another guy was the guy Jimmy. What's the freshman name that had the ridiculous amount of tackles from Mobile, I believe?
It's got to be Thomas. He's got a twin brother. Last name Thomas,
Yes,
though. Is he like at 97 or he's got like a
yes,
number up in the 90s?
yes, that him. He was another guy. Like, first of all, he has a developed body as a freshman. He was out on the edge. He kind of looked like the rest of those Desmond Little type of guys. He's big, he's fast, and he looked ready to play. Tyler Thomas, yes, the guy looked ready to play.
Didn't he have like 1,000 tackles a senior season, Darren?
It was something ridiculous, but I can see because the guy was really, and I can tell, I think he came in a little thin, but no, he wasn't thin out there, and he put on size. Is another guy I would not be afraid to have him in a rotation to get a couple plays in because he made plays. So yes, we will have some young guys rotate in on the D line, but also yes, we have some good veteran guys on the D line that I'm comfortable with playing. You had the transfer from Florida State was out there playing.
Woody.
Yeah, Woody. We named
Montavious
out.
Woody. Yeah.
hmm And we named out a lot of the other guys that was out, and they all performed well. Without Mayala was another guy that wasn't out there that was dinged up as well. It was just precautionary stuff. So we didn't even have Mayala or Keldon Johnson out there, and we still look good. So and we got a stable of young guys. I'm really excited about our future. To be honest with a lot of these young guys, but the most impressive guys were Fish and Tyreek. Oh, Shout out to Daniel Harris. Daniel Harris is not going to play because Daniel is small, right? He's like
Yeah.
maybe 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Harris is going to be a premier pass rusher. That dude, to be small, he has a lot of dog in him, but his get off is good. And people were like, who the hell is 18? Who is 18? I'm seeing him getting like back-to-back sacks. And I'm like, bro, if you put some weight, if he gains 30 pounds, if he redshirts again, if he comes in 230, 240 next year, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not starting. Because you just can't keep a guy off the field that has that type of get off and that type of burst. I'm really, really excited for our future.
And Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but the feeling that I'm getting out of the staff too is that, I mean, they don't really care, about seniority. Like if they've got a freshman that can play and he's ready, they're going to get him in the game.
He's gonna ball. He's gonna
See,
ball.
I like that.
It's all about performance, what you're doing on the field, and also the speed of which you learn mentally the plays. If you're not making mental blunders and you're performing on the field, you're playing fast, then what does seniority really mean? Because seniority really means that you're just more comfortable with the playbook and with the speed of college football and the physicality. Well, if you're proving that doesn't matter to you, that you had all you needed was a spring and a summer and you're comfortable as well, now it's about who's the best player. So I think a lot of those guys are rising to the occasion.
Darren, let me ask you this. A few weeks ago, we had a player transfer out from that position group, grad transfer. Obviously, going into the scrimmage, I would think that we all share the same opinion that we feel really good about the present and the future about the defensive line. Do you, after seeing the team play and what you know at this point, do you think that departure is really going to have us take a step back, or where's just your overall confidence level, even with said departure from the team?
Well, it sucks because he was a good player. We can be upset about the way he left and we can talk about that more on the Patreon. How about that? We'll get in detail about that on the Patreon. But we could be upset about that, but we can also admit that he was a good player, and I think he developed over time. I would say that his instant impact, of course, would have been good because he was a good player. I think he was like one of the top defensive line guys to watch in the AAC or something like that. But I can also say, just going to the scrimmage and seeing what we see, I can also not be worried about that position, if that makes sense. Like, it's like missing Debo. Of course, you would want Debo on your team running the ball. It's Debo. But with all of the guys that we do have, I'm comfortable with what we have. So that's how I feel about missing that player.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Joker Gill, because that I thought that he's had a really good camp so far. Just the way his body is looking, and the way he practices. I hope to see an impact from Joker Gill this season, and also just some other guys that I wanted to mention. Just seeing Darren, and you can talk about them if you want to. But Kevin Penn, obviously he's been a guy that's kind of gotten into the rotation a little bit. But maybe UAB fans can expect to see a little more out of Kevin Penn this year, if he can stay healthy, and some younger guys too. I know you mentioned Woody earlier, but I mean, like a Connor Knight or an Emmanuel Waller. I mean, I think this defensive line that UAB has this year is solid. So I expect good things out of this defensive front.
John, I want to say right now, Emmanuel Waller is at the top of my list for people I'm really rooting for. That guy, his story when he was committed to UAB, we had the coaching change, but how he quickly recommitted to the new staff and really tried to anchor down, this really strong recruiting class that our new staff brought in. and really to see he's got his own YouTube channel where he does some videos and some social media content, and he seems like someone, Darian, that's actually put on some good weight, some solid weight since he arrived, and he's a pretty big guy for a true freshman as well.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that just seamlessly fit out there. I think he ran with the twos and threes. He's another guy I would not be surprised to see out there. He's one of our favorites. Like you mentioned, all the reasons why. So shout out to Emmanuel Waller. Um, we have a really really bright future among the D line, and we're still bringing guys in with the 24 class. But yeah, like so with Kevin Penn, I think we're gonna get like a mixture for the twos on the inside of Antavius Woody and Kevin Penn and Merriweather, and then we still got guys like Smalls and Connor Knight, and to still like we can redshirt maybe, and then we got Waller and Tyler Thomas and all these guys and Daniel Harris. We got these guys coming off the edge. We have a really, really bright future, man. Like in 2 years with these guys, I think we're going to easily have the best D line in the AAC. Easily. So,
big statement.
Yeah, that was you heard I said it with cockiness too. I said easily.
Clip it.
Yeah, clip it easily. Yeah, give it 2 years. in the PAC AAC merger.
The PAC, whatever the hell they're gonna call this, whatever it is.
But yeah, I really like this group. I think we're gonna be solid up front. I think it all depends on because we're gonna be dealing with different caliber of offensive linemen. So I think it's about how our guys adjust to the physicality. That's gonna determine how good we will be this year. But for next year, we're going to be ready. But for this year, how can we, depth-wise, because Tyreek, Fish, we're good. How do the rest of the guys adjust to the physicality?
Yeah, and I feel like it's, what we talked about last week, Darian and Jimmy, it's kind of the same thing with that offensive line. Like you feel kind of confident about a core group, but after that, like who's going to be the guy that steps up in case of injury or, a rotational, a 12 personnel, like, from the offensive line but who's going to step up on that defensive line? Obviously you just hit on, Fish being a very vocal leader in practice. And, we're going to get to the linebackers in a minute. But Jimmy, did you have any other questions about the line before we just go ahead and move into linebackers?
No, let's move to linebacker.
Okay, yeah. I hope folks, last week we hit on 20 minutes on the offensive line, and this week we're about 20 minutes on the defensive line. But hey, very important is the offensive line and defensive line. So in the trenches, that's who you rely on. So we'll move into linebackers. Another vocal leader, who I was able to speak to on the Patreon, again, patreon.com/BlazerPod, was Jackson Bratton. Did you see anything out of the scrimmage, Darian, with Jackson Bratton? Because I told him during our interview, like I noticed you being a vocal leader this year. Do you think that Jackson's kind of embracing that leadership mentality and kind of taking a hold of that inside linebacker position for UAB?
Yes. Yes, this is the simple answer. He was a guy that barely got off the field during the scrimmage and didn't complain once, and he played full speed every time. He looks bigger. He looks stronger. He gets to the ball fast. He's another guy off the field like Zeno that just looked like he knows he's the captain. Like, this is my defense, right? And he's walking in there. He's carrying himself that way. So, yes, I'm confident with Jackson being there. Totally.
Good. And I mean, hey, there's some other guys on the inside linebacker position that UAB fans will need to note. And guys, this is somebody we talked about in the spring that kind of stood out, Darren. Charlie Good. I mean, is he still making plays out there at the inside linebacker position?
Yeah. So I asked one of the former players. He was a center. I can't think of his name. But I asked him. He was like, man, just last year, I was practicing against, Good. And he was like, man, he used to get on my nerves. He was always like talking trash. Right. He was like, he was talking trash. He was like, I had to block him a lot because I had to double up to him. And he was like, he was always just going 100% talking trash, doing whatever. He was like, he used to get on my nerves. But he was like, I'm not surprised. So I wanted to ask some guys about Charlie Good and how surprised they were that he was in this position that he was in because he's gonna play and he's gonna play a lot. And they was like, nah, the dude went 100%, 100%. He's gotten bigger. He was one of those headache guys. He was gonna run into you, give you everything he got, and he was gonna let you know about it. He was gonna talk about it. I love players that got that dog in them, right? And it seems like he was one of those guys that got that dog, and they're not surprised at all. I think he just needed to get bigger and get used to the speed of the game. He's clearly adjusted to that. He's prepared his body and his attitude, his demeanor to be in this position. So I'm excited for him to get to showcase himself. Another guy that came along like that was Noah Wilder. What was the school Noah came from, if y'all can remember?
Oh my goodness. Jimmy, do you remember?
Gardner Webb.
Gardner Webb, yeah, that's right.
A Gardner Webb transfer, right? He came in, and I remember them talking about him. They called him like Wild Wolf or something like that. Like he had the long hair, he was just flying around smacking people. I feel like it's kind of the same thing with Charlie. Like he just seems like he's following in that mode of Noah. So we've seen this story before, and we've seen how much that worked out for us. So I'm happy for him, and I'm happy. I really like hearing from other players that they're not surprised and that they're also happy for him, and they're excited that we get to see what he can do now.
Definitely. And I mean, this linebacker position was, if you had to pick a question mark, going into this 2023 defense for UAB, I mean, I guess the linebacker would be the question mark, specifically, inside too. But did guys like, Reese Collier or Tamarius Brown stand out to you in the scrimmage? Because I mean, those guys kind of pop off in practice on the limited times, we get to see practice. I mean, but what would you say, Darian, about Tamarius Brown or Reese Collier?
Yeah, Tamarius Brown has gotten a lot bigger. He looks ready. I'm the guys at the linebacker position had a lot more speed than I originally thought they did, and they were reading the gaps. They were getting downhill, and they were stopping plays. Reese Collier played a lot kind of with the 2-3 area, and Tamarius Brown kind of mixed all over 1, 2, 3. It didn't matter. I was worried about size. But seeing how they transformed their body, like Tamarius was one of those guys I thought was probably, when I seen him, probably was 215. The guy looks about 235, 240, 235. It was a lot of muscle there, so I'm excited about those guys having another year to really prepare to play. And I think they're gonna provide really good depth. I'm anxious to see them in game time. The linebacker group, along with Russo, he was a guy that was mixing in a lot and making plays. As a true freshman, I expect to see him play. I'd be surprised if he don't. I saw Damian Miller in that linebacker some, and I think he's going to do that hybrid role thing, kind of like a Will Bowler in a sense.
Yeah.
Just for matchup purposes. Maybe get down there to run fit and cover tight ends or something. But yeah, I'm happy from what I saw. But we really won't be able to know what this linebacker group can bring until game time. So, but as far as what I saw from the scrimmage, I was pleased.
Good. And I know we kind of hit on the outside linebackers earlier. When we discussed, Nakia East and Fairbanks. Did you talk about Desmond Little? I'm trying to remember. Did you bring up? Okay, good. Well, Jimmy,
yeah, tall, physical guy, long, physical guy, wearing number 1, looking like a stud out there. Yeah.
Well, Jimmy, if you got any questions, go for it.
Hey, my question was going to be about Damian Miller. Just we heard a couple weeks ago that they were mixing him in with that linebacker group, and I was just curious what y'all's thoughts were into that situation. Was it something where you read into maybe the recent addition of Thornton at safety, the Clemson, South Florida transfer, or is it potentially the need to bring some additional strength in that inside linebacker group? Is that something you're reading into, or is it more so just to kind of create some additional versatility and development with Damian Miller, and just to take advantage of his physicality, because him and his brother Damon, who I know we'll talk about here a little bit later, are certainly very physical players.
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of both. I think we have a lot of good players that we can play back there at safety that they feel comfortable with. One being the surprising Ike Roll, who's really, really, you can tell that they trust a lot. And I think he was out there starting, but just we'll get to them. But I think we have enough good players in that defensive backfield that we could take advantage of Damien's versatility and his physicalness. So I think it's just trying to slot the player in the best position that we can slot him in to succeed. So also to meet the demands of what the team need as well, because yeah, you can play safety, but we don't need him to play safety all the time when we have pretty good safeties that we have up there that we trust. So how can we best deploy him so he can get the most playing time? And I think dropping him down at linebacker in certain packages and then back at safety in certain packages was just the best way with guys like Ray Thornton and Ike Royal and even Chris Bracey back there, Front Troy, and all these different dudes we got back there playing safety. And some of the transfers we got at defensive back. It was just trying to get him on the field as much as possible without taking away from our top end talent, I believe.
Definitely. I mean, that is a great transition into discussing the secondary. And I feel Kenneth Gilstrap does a great job with those guys in the secondary. But let's just go ahead and talk about those safeties. Like a Keandre Swoops, obviously Chris Bracey, Ray Thornton, Ike Rowell, Damon Miller, really loaded back there. And I guess Darren, you already kind of hit on them, so I guess we can go ahead and go to cornerbacks.
I got one question. I do want to just dive in a little bit on the Bracey situation, because he's someone that Chris Bracey, by the way, he's someone that was the first commitment of the prior signing period, where he had committed to Bryant Vincent, who was the interim coach at the time. And, he had some other offers, but when we looked at that class in totality, he wasn't the first name that we brought up when we talked about on paper, look at the offers, the rankings, which we know, are subjective anyhow. But, now, as we go into fall camp, just from a fan observation, we're starting to hear that name, right? Chris Bracey. So, Darian, was there anything in particular that really stood out of his play to you? And is the talk warranted based on what you saw in the scrimmage?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was good seeing him wear 21 out there, because to me that signifies like, oh, he's a student of the game, right? I know why you're wearing that 21, But then also, with guys like, I can say this about the defense, it was so much subbing going on. It was like some guys that were out there all the time. And that was like the two guys that I saw out there all the time was Jackson Bratton and Ike Rule. I'm like, do they get out any? It seemed like they were in all the time. But other than that, it seemed like a whole bunch of subbing was going on. Of course, you got guys like D-Mac and Dempsey and Swoops, and you got all those guys. It's like, okay, what's up. Like, they don't have to play all the time. Cool. But with Bracey, I was trying to keep up with him and Fontroy. I was trying to keep up with a lot of these guys, but it was so hard to like keep up when you're trying to like look at the offense and the defense.
Yeah.
I can say I did see Bracey get in there. I'm trying to think if he had any pass deflections or anything. Nobody looked like a liability. I'm gonna start there. Secondly, I did see him get downhill and make some tackles. Thirdly, he's a lot bigger than what I I don't know why I thought he was like a smaller safety kind of guy. He's not. He's a pretty good size safety. A lot of the sizes of these guys really surprised me. But yeah, he was one of those guys. I was like, oh, he can hold up on his own against a physical guy easily. So, but yeah, as far did I notice any highlights from him? No. Did I see him out there making solid plays, tackles, getting downhill, being where he's supposed to be? Yes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got into the rotation here and there. But we had so many guys. I don't know how much he'll play, but I'm pretty sure he'll get in there at some point.
And kind of transitioning to the DBs, I mean, obviously, Mac McWilliams is back, Kobe Dempsey, 80 Diamond had a hell of a spring game. And then the incarnate word transfer, BJ Mays, who you alluded to earlier. But anything kind of stand out to you as far as the DBs, or was it just kind of typical lockdown coverage for UAB secondary?
Oh yeah, we got some good DBs. Like I'm good. It's funny after losing Sterling, but I've always been high on like Kobe Dempsey. So I felt comfortable. But yeah, just having good young guys and good guys that we're bringing back. They look ready to compete, man. Like BJ, like I talked about it in the offensive preview. But BJ Mays looks like he's big and he has these dreads that flow out the back of his helmet. I'm like, who is this dude? Oh, that's BJ. Oh, okay. Yeah, then seeing Ray Thornton on the other side, I'm like, we look like we ready out here. Like Ray Thornton in that safety, and he was making plays, and BJ Mays and Kobe Dempsey competing with Desmond Little to wear number one. And I'm always been high on Kobe, and then D-Mac is D-Mac. One interesting tidbit is like one of the coaches said that D-Mac would have started at Ohio State. That's how highly they think of D-Mac. They were like, oh yeah, he would have easily been one of the starters at Ohio State. So we need to understand that some of the talent that we do have, we don't need to downplay that. He would have been a starter there. So he really is a lockdown corner. So hopefully we can just keep him healthy. But guys like Ricky Lee, look, these dudes don't look lost. Like they look like they should be playing. And Ricky Lee is gonna be in the mix there. BJ Mays, Kobe Dempsey, D-Mac. Who am I missing at corner? Of course, Swoops is gonna be at that star position. And I think
Diamond too. Yeah.
yes, I feel like Trey Miles. We have some very dependable looking guys. I saw Jalen Ferguson make a really solid tackle coming downhill. Okay, he came downhill and popped somebody. But yeah, 80 Diamond. I think we're good at corner. Like I know this sounds like a hype. It sounds like it's just a hype pod, but just from what I saw, we're gonna be competitive. I can say this, like the BS rankings, like where they have us at, like finishing last. We're not gonna finish last. We're not gonna finish second or last. That's a prediction I can make with my chest. We're not gonna finish last or next to last.
Hey, that's a motivator though. I mean, hey, that's bulletin board material with a lot of people picking UAB to be last in the AAC, one of the worst teams in the nation. Like, hey, that's bulletin board material. That's what motivates you every day to, prove them wrong, prove the haters wrong.
And I guess we're gonna quote unquote catch teams off guard. No, we are way better than those predictions. Like I can say that. Well, honestly, I don't know where we'll finish overall, but we're better than that. Like it's not even close. So I guess that's the prediction I can give, and I'm confident in our defensive backfield. And one guy I really wanted to touch on was Ike Roll because I did see Evan Dudley did an article on him, and it was just talking about his accolades in high school. But I didn't know he was like a 3A play of the year, like kind of guy. I didn't know he played quarterback, and he was like that in 3A, he was like that all-around athlete type of guy, Ike Roll, right? So I saw him playing a lot. Like I saw him starting, and I saw him not get off the field a lot at safety. So I went around. I was asking players like, Ike Roll, is it a surprise? Like he's really transformed his body. I mean, he's got the veins coming through his biceps type of deal going on now. I'm like, wow, he was a little skinny guy or whatever. But now he's this stout guy. So one thing I thought that he was more of a hitter. I thought he was more of a hitter. So Jimmy, I think you got a question about Ike that you want to ask. Go ahead.
Hey, I just want to talk about the local school where I went, Hewitt Trustful, and bring out a Hewitt comp here. So, how would you compare the game to Grayson Cash? You know, a UAB player, recent graduate, made a big impact on the field because I watched Grayson Cash play in high school even before UAB, and that guy was playing multiple positions. He was doing everything from receiver to running back to punting the dang ball and scoring 6, 7 touchdowns in games, and didn't have a lot of offers. Now, Hewitt Trustful is at a much higher level than where Ike played at, but how would you kind of compare those two players' games for UAB fans?
And what I would compare about those two guys, I think their story is going to be comparable. I think that's what's going to be comparable. Like you just named out all the reasons why they kind of did the same things for the team. I honestly believe they are two different style of safeties. Like now seeing the guy he is now, because I think Grayson was a guy that was going to always be in the right position, and he had enough measurables to get there. He wasn't the fastest, but his IQ and everything was on such a next level that he had to be on the field. Ike is a guy. I was so surprised. I'm asking all these players, and the first thing they say about Ike is his speed. Oh, fast. That boy fast. That boy, I did not know he was that. I'm like, dang, is he that fast? I'm asking guys, and they like fastest on the team fast. Like they saying that he's a
Wow.
blazer. Like, yeah, I was surprised. Like Ike Roll, I never knew. They was like, no, this dude can fly. Like they said he got up to 24.5 miles per hour. They said this dude can fly. And I did not know that. So it seemed like they're two different styles of safeties. He's a guy that can really cover ground, get over the field, and he can really hit once he gets there. I felt like Grayson was more of that all around kind of throwback type safety guy, that dependable guy that you know you're going to make plays in the clutch. While Ike just seemed like a guy that was such a good athlete, and that if he just gained some weight and had an understanding of the playbook, there's a guy that's like, you can't keep him off the field because he's such a good athlete, and he has this speed that I did not know of, like top of the line of the team. So I'm excited to see him play. I wonder that the players were really high on him. He was another guy that was a walk on, I believe, out of Fife High School. Um, I'm ready to see him play and see what he can do in the AAC.
And also, Jimmy, I'm glad you brought up, Grayson Cash. Shout out to Grayson. He's coaching at Moody High School with TD Marshall now too. So that's great to see, him still involved in the game. So shout out to Grayson Cash at Moody High School with TD Marshall. And guys, we can go ahead and transition from the defense into the special teams. Just off the top of your head, Darian, did you notice anything with the kicking game out of the scrimmage that you were able to see?
It wasn't too much that I could take away from, except that Caden Long looks like a lot like his brother. He looks just like Ty. But the thing that I can tell you is punting wise, he was punting from, 40, 50 a lot going in. He was placed, I saw at least 3 times he placed it right on the 1 yard line. Right on the 1 yard line. I know Trey had to be watching the specialist a lot more than I was. But Caden caught my eye. I'm like, golly, like we done down the punt inside the 5 like 5 times. He was doing a really, really good job with that. Now, of course, it'll be different in the game. He didn't have players and or punt block running all at him, and but just the placement from him was elite. So I'm excited to see what he do in the game. I'm going to see if he's going to be better than his brother. I played with Ty, so um, I won't. I'm pretty sure nobody more than Ty wants his brother to succeed and be better than him. So yeah, man, I came away really impressed with Caden.
And then you've got Matt Quinn coming back as a redshirt senior too, and but UAB fans are accustomed to seeing with Matt Quinn, so expect him to have another good year this year kicking the ball. And hey, and shout out long snapping with Xander Eccles. I know he listens to the program, so shout out to Xander Eccles on long snapping. Return game wise, Darren, do you think UAB fans could expect to see, whether it's Skull, TJ Jones, or, who do you expect kind of to return the kicks and punts for this UAB team? I know, granted, it's just one. Yeah, but that's Jimmy too. That's a good point. Just one scrimmage, but were you able to catch anything with the return game?
No, I think the guy maybe T.J. Jones or B.J. Hawkins. B.J. Hawkins is a guy that I forgot to bring up in the offensive pod. That's just because like it's so many mouths to feed, like it's crazy. But I think probably first crack at it maybe T.J. Jones, if I'm not mistaken. Wouldn't be surprised. Well, I don't think we should have to put a guy like D-Mac back there since we got so many receivers that can do it. So,
right.
I think it'll be B.J. Jones, or maybe I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Iverson Hooks back there just to try to get the ball in his hands. So T.J. Jones, Iverson Hooks, maybe B.J. Hawkins is a guy that can get these guys deserve touches, like they can make plays. So
Jimmy, we need to bring that up. Did Debo really return kicks for the Vikings in that preseason game?
He did. Yes, they had him out there.
Oh my goodness.
He got popped in the first one too, man. the guy tried to pop him and he kind of hesitated a little bit. He didn't go down easy, but yeah, they had him returning kicks. I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on with that situation, but hell, we might look back in a few years when we got Demetrius Battle returning kicks in the NFL. Isaiah Jacobs returning.
Hey, good luck bringing 8-ball down.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. But let me see. Anything else in regards to special teams that we need to bring up before we wrap this thing up? Well, what are we at? 44 minutes, so we are right on the line. We went a little over last week, but right now we're under 45 minutes. Guys, again, just plugging the Patreon. Well, before we plug the Patreon, if you want to support the Blazer Victory podcast, other than the Patreon, just subscribe to this podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, YouTube, wherever you're listening to us right now, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any future episodes of the Blazer Victory podcast. And Darian, Jimmy, next week is game week where we're going to preview NC-A&T. Man, can't believe we're at this point where we're about to kick it off, but exciting times on the Blazer Victory podcast, and you guys can expect 2 episodes a week. The first episode previewing the game, and the second episode will be a reaction to that game. Hopefully most of the time we'll be able to do an instant reaction, but hey, sometimes we have to kind of sleep on it and give it that next morning reaction. Ain't that right, Darren?
Yeah, that's right.
So, hey, we're about to be in full Blazer Victory podcast mode. This will be the 4th season covering for the Blazer Victory podcast. This will be Darian's 2nd season and Jimmy's 1st football season. So we're excited to see, all the takes that the guys have this year, and we hope for a very successful year under Trent Dilfer with the new conference in the AAC. But again, subscribe to the podcast. Hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/BlazerPod, where you're going to continue to get exclusive episodes and interviews. That's one thing we're doing this year is we're moving most of our interviews to the Patreon. And as far as I know, guys, we've had nothing but positive feedback with the interviews we've done so far at camp. But expect the other side interviews that we did last year that was on the free show, where we're getting BJ Jones to preview some NCAA and other games this season. That's going to be on the Patreon. So it's just more exclusive content for you to consume and help support the Blazer Victory podcast, continued coverage of UAB athletics, and $5 a month, guys. It's just $5 a month. It helps support us tremendously. And again, we are offering an annual membership discount. If you don't want to pay monthly, you can pay annually and save 10%. So basically a free month of the Blazer Victory podcast. But guys, anything? Oh, hey, real shout out. So Darian, by the time this episode comes out, Baby Z should be here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll know the sex of our baby finally. So yeah, we
Let's
should be
go.
there. So let's go.
Yes, and we are giving Darian a week or two of leave from the Blazer Victory podcast. So
Yeah, I'm getting my FMLA. So yeah.
hey, you better tell him that Patreon one more time.
Yeah, for real.
Awesome. Well, excited, for you and Shaniqua and the fam. And if it's okay with them, we will let everybody know through our Twitter handle, when Baby Z arrives. But Darian, you want to close us out this time until next week for game week?
Yes, sir. Blazer Nation, just blaze.